The night was colder than usual that Halloween. A thick red mist hung above the small village of Raven Hollow. The moon looked strange dark in the center and bleeding red around the edges. It wasn't just another Halloween. Everyone could feel something watching from the dark hills beyond. In the middle of those hills, there was an old pumpkin field. No one went there anymore. The villagers called it the Field of Whispers. Every year, strange sounds came from that place, like breathing or someone whispering names in the wind. They said the soil was cursed because a vampire once died there centuries ago. But tonight, 3 teenagers, Liam, Nora, and Ben, decided to go there. They wanted to film a scary video for Halloween night. They laughed as they carried their flashlights, not knowing what waited for them. "Relax," Ben said, pointing his camera. "It's just an old field. What's the worst that can happen?" Nora shivered. "It's not funny. My grandmother told me this place is alive." The path was muddy. Their footsteps made a squishy sound as they moved between the withered pumpkins. The air smelled like wet metal and rot. Suddenly, Nora froze. "Did you hear that?" she whispered. A soft voice came from the ground. "Go back." Ben laughed nervously. "Who's there?" Silence. Only the wind moved, but it didn't sound like normal wind. It sounded like hundreds of whispers together. Liam turned his flashlight toward a large pumpkin in the center of the field. It was glowing faintly from the inside, like a weak red candle trapped within. "Let's open it," he said. "No." Nora stepped back. "Something's wrong." But Liam reached out. The pumpkin's surface was warm, too warm for a cold night. He pulled his knife from his pocket and made a small cut on the shell. Instantly, dark red liquid oozed out. It wasn't juice. It was blood. Ben gasped. "What the hell is that?" Before they could move, the ground beneath them trembled. The red moon above began to pulse, as if beating like a heart. The pumpkins around them cracked one by one, spilling dark blood onto the soil. A scream low and ancient rose from beneath the earth. Liam dropped the knife. "We need to run!" They turned, but the path they came from was gone. The fog had thickened, swirling around them like hands pulling them back. In the mist, a shape began to rise. It wasn't human. From the ground emerged a tall figure wrapped in black ash and dirt. Its skin was pale as bone, and its eyes glowed crimson. Sharp veins pulsed on its face as it took its first breath in centuries. The alpha vampire had awakened. His voice echoed through the field, deep and hungry. "Who broke my seal?" The 3 teens stood frozen. The vampire's gaze moved from one to the other. His presence was heavy, like the air itself had become stone. Nora fell to her knees, shaking. "We're sorry. We didn't know." He smiled, a slow, terrifying smile showing his sharp fangs. "You woke me with blood." Liam stepped forward, trying to speak, but the vampire moved faster than sight. In a blink, he was behind Liam, whispering near his ear. "Your fear smells sweet." Liam screamed as his flashlight shattered, plunging the field into red darkness. Only the moonlight showed brief glimpses. The vampire's long nails, his shadow stretching across the pumpkins, and the reflection of blood on the ground. Nora grabbed Ben's hand. "Run!" They sprinted through the fog, but the field seemed endless. The whispers followed them. "You cannot leave. The blood binds you." Ben tripped over a vine. No, not a vine, a hand. A pale arm reached from the soil, pulling him down. More hands emerged from the ground. The dead of the field, rising, still loyal to their master. The vampire's voice rolled across the field, like thunder. This night, under the blood moon, the pumpkins feed again. Ben screamed as hands dragged him below. Nora turned and saw his face vanish beneath the soil. Then she saw the vampire standing in front of her, the moon glowing behind him. "Please," she begged, tears streaming. "Don't hurt me." The vampire tilted his head. "You woke me, child. The curse must continue." He lifted his hand, and a dark shadow wrapped around Nora's throat. But before he could finish, the church bell in the distance rang midnight. The sound burned through the fog like fire. The vampire hissed in pain, covering his face. For a second, Nora saw fear in his eyes. She took the chance and ran toward the village lights in the distance, never looking back. When she finally reached the first house, she collapsed at the doorstep, trembling. People gathered around her, asking what happened, but she couldn't speak. Only one sentence came out of her mouth. "The pumpkins are bleeding again." Back in the field, the alpha vampire watched from the shadows. He touched the blood on his fingers and smiled. "The curse lives, and soon, so shall I." As the bell stopped ringing, the red moon burned brighter, and the pumpkins began to grow again, each one with a faint heartbeat inside. The next morning should have been bright, but the sky over Raven Hollow was still red. The sun tried to rise, yet the clouds looked like bleeding smoke. People whispered that Halloween night had cursed the village. Nora sat on her bed, wrapped in a blanket. Her mother thought she had a fever, but Nora knew the truth. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Ben's hand sinking into the ground and heard Liam's scream echo in her head. Down in the kitchen, her grandmother was lighting candles. "The pumpkins were restless again," she muttered. "It means the alpha vampire walks." Nora's voice shook. "You knew?" Her grandmother's wrinkled face hardened. "Long ago, before this village existed, there was a war between humans and vampires. The strongest of them all, Lord Valen, was trapped under the pumpkin field. They sealed him with blood magic. But every 100 years, when the moon turns red, he tries to rise again." Nora's heart pounded. "And last night, we woke him. That evening, a cold wind blew through the streets. Windows rattled. Dogs barked at shadows. The church bell stopped working, its rope mysteriously cut. A farmer named Edgar Mills walked through the pumpkin fields outside town. He carried a lantern and muttered, 'Kids must have made a mess again.' But as he reached the edge of the field, he froze. Every pumpkin was moving. They pulsed like hearts slow, wet, heavy beats. Thump, thump, thump. Then one of them cracked open from the inside. Edgar's lantern trembled in his hand. Something crawled out, small at first, black as tar. It hissed. Then another pumpkin broke, and another. He dropped the lantern. Flames spread fast, lighting the field in an orange glow. The shapes coming out were not animals, they were pumpkin-faced creatures, half flesh, half root, with glowing eyes and dripping mouths. From the smoke, Valen appeared. His long coat dragged across the burning soil. The firelight reflected in his red eyes. His voice was soft but strong enough to silence every creature. "Feast, my children. The harvest of fear begins." The monsters turned toward the village. Back in town, Nora sat near the window when she heard screams. She ran outside and saw shadows crawling across the rooftops. Pumpkins rolled through the streets, cracking open into hideous faces. People ran for their lives. The church doors burst open. Father Elias, holding a silver cross, shouted, "Get inside, quickly!" Nora ran toward him. "He's awake, Father. The alpha vampire is real." Elias locked the doors and whispered, "I know. I've seen the signs. The curse comes every century." He pointed to the altar, where an old book lay. "There is only one way to stop him. The last page speaks of the heart of ash, a relic buried with him." Before he could finish, the stained glass window shattered. The air grew cold. A tall shadow stepped through the broken frame. Lord Valen had arrived. He looked almost human now. Dark hair, pale skin, eyes like burning coals. The smell of blood followed him. He smiled. "Father Elias, your prayers have kept me waiting." Elias raised his cross. "You will not touch this village." Valen moved so fast, the candle flames bent backward. He was suddenly in front of the priest, holding the cross like a toy. Faith cannot stop hunger. The cross melted in his hand. Elias screamed as the vampire bit into his neck. The church lights went out. Nora hid under the pew, covering her mouth to stop from crying. When the sound stopped, she dared to look up. The vampire stood at the altar, drops of blood shining on his chin. "The world has forgotten me," he said softly. "But tonight, they will remember fear." He turned his head, eyes finding Nora instantly. You freed me, little one." Nora ran. She dashed through the side door and into the graveyard. The fog was thick. Tombstones looked like ghostly faces. She tripped, scraping her knees, but didn't stop. Behind her, Valen's footsteps were silent, yet she felt him. Suddenly, a hand grabbed her arm. It was old Martha, the gravekeeper. "Quiet, child. This way." Martha pulled her into a stone crypt and shut the heavy door. Inside, the air smelled of dust and wax. "You saw him?" Nora gasped. "Yes," Martha whispered, "and I know where his heart lies." She opened a box, showing an old silver dagger covered in runes. "This can wound him, but only if the heart of ash is destroyed first." "Where is it?" Martha looked toward the burning sky. "Under the oldest pumpkin in the field, the one that bleeds." Nora trembled. "I can't go back there." Martha placed the dagger in her hand. "You must. The vampire's curse began with your blood. Only you can end it." Outside, the bell tower collapsed with a crash. Flames painted the fog red. The vampire's laughter echoed across the night. Nora looked at the dagger, then at the crypt door. Her fear began to change into anger. "If he wants blood," she said, "he'll get it." As she stepped out, the full blood moon rose higher. Every pumpkin in the field turned its face toward the light, whispering one name over and over. "Valen, Valen." And from the church tower's ruins, the alpha vampire spread his wings of shadow, smiling down at her. "Come to me, little mortal. Let the curse complete." The wind howled, carrying ashes across Raven Hollow. The blood moon had fully risen, and the real hunt was about to begin. The village of Raven Hollow was burning. Screams echoed between the old stone houses, and the sky glowed red from the cursed moon. Shadows moved across the roofs, some human, some not. The smell of fire mixed with the sweet, metallic scent of blood. Nora ran through the narrow streets, clutching the silver dagger in her hand. Her heart beat so fast she thought it would burst. "I have to end this," she whispered to herself, "before he kills everyone." She reached the edge of the village, where the fog was thickest. The path to the Field of Whispers waded the same path, where her friends had vanished. Each step made the ground colder. The whispering voices had returned. "Turn back. He is awake. He is hungry." But Nora didn't stop. At the same time, deep under the burning church, the alpha vampire, Lord Valen, sat upon the cracked altar. His eyes glowed like fire trapped in glass. Around him, shadows moved and bowed the reanimated souls of those buried in Raven Hollow's graveyard. Valen smiled. "The curse grows stronger. Soon, the blood moon will feed me enough power to walk in daylight." One of the dead, an old man with hollow eyes, spoke in a broken voice. "The girl runs to the field, my lord." Valen's smile widened. "Good. She runs to me without knowing that the field itself obeys my will." He rose, spreading his black cloak like wings. "Let the harvest begin." Nora stepped back into the field. It was no longer empty. The pumpkins were huge and breathing, their veins glowing red. Each one pulsed like a living heart. The ground beneath her boots was warm, almost alive. She found the oldest pumpkin, the one from last night. It stood in the middle, cracked open, leaking dark blood. Beneath it, the soil looked black and burnt. "This must be where he was buried," she whispered. She knelt and began digging with her hands. The earth felt wet and sticky. After a few moments, her fingers hit something hard. a stone box covered in ash and old vines. She pulled it out, coughing as black smoke rose from the cracks. Inside the box lay a beating heart, gray, dry, and still somehow alive. The heart of ash. It pulsed once, twice, and then opened its single red eye. Nora screamed and stumbled back. The ground split open. From below came Valen's voice, deep and thunderous. "You dare touch my heart, mortal." The soil exploded upward as the vampire emerged, his claws slicing through the air. His long hair blew in the wind, and his fangs glistened under the blood moon. "You cannot destroy what was born from the first curse," he growled. Nora raised the dagger. "You killed my friends. You destroyed my home. This ends tonight." Valen laughed, a dark, echoing laugh that shook the field. "You think courage can stop hunger? You think purity can kill the immortal?" He stepped closer. "I am the Alpha of the night, the first vampire. The moon itself bows before me." Nora tightened her grip. "Then bow to this." She slashed the dagger across his chest. The silver burned through his skin, and black smoke burst from the wound. Valen roared in pain, falling to his knees for a moment. The ground screamed with him. The pumpkins around them started bleeding faster. The fog thickened. The whispers turned into wails. "You fool," Valen shouted. "If my heart dies, the curse will consume everything." Nora didn't listen. She lifted the heart from the box. It was heavier now, beating faster like it was alive. The blood moon flashed brighter above. She could feel something pulling her as if the heart wanted to fuse with her own. "Join me," the voice whispered inside her mind. "Be my queen, and this pain will end." For a second, she froze. She saw images in her head: power, immortality, freedom from fear. But then she saw Ben's terrified face and Liam's scream. Tears filled her eyes. "No, I'd rather die human than live as a monster." She raised the heart high and stabbed it with the silver dagger. A scream erupted not from Valen's mouth but from the sky itself. The blood moon shattered like glass. Red light poured down like fire. Valen fell backward, clutching his chest as cracks spread across his body. "No!" he roared. "You cannot destroy eternity!" The pumpkins exploded one by one, spilling fire and blood into the soil. The entire field turned into a pit of red light. Nora was thrown to the ground, the dagger still in her hand. Valen crawled toward her, his body burning. "You will die with me," Nora's voice trembled. "Maybe, but at least I end the curse." She stabbed the dagger one last time into the heart of ash. A blast of crimson fire engulfed them both. The earth shook. The whispers screamed, then vanished into silence. When the morning came, the fog was gone. The sky was clear for the first time in days. The villagers found the field burned to ash. There were no pumpkins left, only a single silver dagger lying in the center, still warm. Nora was gone. So was Lord Valen. But as the people turned to leave, a faint heartbeat echoed beneath the soil. Thump, 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 and far away, in the shadow of the mountains, a single red pumpkin began to grow again. 3 days passed after the fire in Raven Hollow. The villagers tried to forget, but no one could sleep. Every night, people heard faint heartbeats under the ground, slow, steady, alive. The burned field had turned black and silent. The soil looked dead, yet something moved beneath it. On the 4th night, a storm came. The wind howled across the hills, lightning struck the ruins, and from the ashes, a single red seed pushed through the ground. It glowed like an ember in the dark. The blood seed had returned. At the same time, miles away, a traveling merchant named Elias Crow stopped his wagon near the edge of Raven Hollow. He had never been to this village before. The storm had forced him to stay for the night. He looked around at the dark fields and broken fences. "Strange place," he muttered. As he unpacked his things, he noticed something shiny stuck to the wheel. A small red seed, wet with mud. He pulled it off and placed it on the table inside his wagon. It pulsed faintly, like a drop of living blood. He frowned. Probably just a strange berry. He didn't know that the seed was watching him. At midnight, the seed began to grow. Tiny roots crawled across the wooden floor, like veins searching for flesh. Elias woke up to the sound of scratching. "Rats?" he mumbled, lighting a candle. But what he saw froze his blood. The seed had split open. A small pumpkin, black and red, was growing fast. Too fast. Within seconds, it was the size of a head. Then, a mouth opened on it. It whispered in a voice that wasn't human. "The Alpha lives. Feed us blood." Elias stumbled back. The candle fell, setting the floor on fire. He ran out of the wagon, but something grabbed his leg, a long red vine wrapping around him. It burned his skin. He screamed into the storm, but no one came. The vines dragged him back inside. The wagon rocked violently, then went still. When morning came, all that remained was smoke and a field of tiny red seedlings growing where the wagon had stood. Back in Raven Hollow, old Martha walked through the graveyard with a lantern. She had survived the night of fire, but lost everything. Her hands trembled as she prayed. "Protect this land, Holy Father," she whispered. Suddenly, the ground beneath one of the graves cracked. A black hand burst through the soil, pale fingers, sharp nails. Martha dropped the lantern and screamed. The earth opened wider, and a body climbed out. It was Father Elias, the priest, who had died in the church. His eyes glowed red. "My prayers were heard," he said in a voice that wasn't his. Martha backed away. "No, you should be dead." He smiled slowly. "Death is only another kind of hunger." Before she could run, he vanished in a blur. The next moment, she felt his cold breath behind her ear. "The Alpha rises through us all." Her scream echoed across the valley. That night, the fog returned. From the soil of Raven Hollow, hundreds of red seedlings began to grow. Each one pulsed like a heart. The wind carried a whisper through the fields. The seed of the Alpha spreads. In the distance, a tall figure stood on the ruined church tower. Lord Valen. His skin was cracked from fire. His body still weak, but his eyes burned brighter than ever. "The mortal girl destroyed my heart," he said softly, his voice mixing with the wind. "But she planted my soul in every drop of blood she spilled." He opened his hand. A small red seed floated above his palm, glowing like fire. "Now I am everywhere." Behind him, black wings unfolded again, torn but alive. Meanwhile, Nora's voice echoed faintly in the dark, but not from her body, from somewhere beyond, as if trapped between worlds. "If anyone finds this story, do not touch the pumpkins. Do not plant the seeds." But her warning came too late. Children in nearby villages began finding small red pumpkins near their homes. Some carved them for Halloween. Some kept them as decorations. And by the next moon, every house that had one woke to the same thing: blood dripping from the walls. As the wind howled through Raven Hollow, the Alpha vampire looked toward the horizon and smiled. "The curse has taken root, and this time, no light will stop it." Lightning flashed. The fields came alive once more, filled with whispers, moving shadows, and pumpkins glowing red like 1,000 eyes in the dark. By the next full moon, Raven Hollow was no longer a village. It was a wound that refused to heal. Every house had burned marks on its doors. Every window hid eyes that feared the dark. People whispered prayers, but even God seemed silent. Children spoke of pumpkins that blinked in the night. Chickens were found without blood. Dogs barked at shadows that were not there. And at the edge of the town, red vines crept through the soil, spreading like veins of the earth. Inside the abandoned schoolhouse, a group of survivors gathered. There was Martha, old but brave. Elena, a mother holding her baby. Tomas, the blacksmith, and Jacob, a traveler who claimed he had seen the vampire once, long ago. The curse is alive, Martha said, her voice shaking. The alpha seed grows under our feet. Jacob slammed his hand on the table. Then we burn it. Fire is the only answer. But Elena shook her head. I burned one of those pumpkins last night, she whispered. And this morning, 3 more grew inside my house. Everyone fell silent. Outside, the fog rolled through the streets again. It carried a faint sound like a heartbeat mixed with whispering voices. The smell of blood grew thicker with every breath. Tomas peeked through the window. Something's moving out there. Shapes walked through the fog, not alive, not dead. Faces pale as wax, eyes glowing faintly red. They were the villagers who had disappeared the week before. They're coming back, Elena whispered. Martha made the sign of the cross. No, they never left. The door rattled. Then came the sound of scratching long nails dragging across the wood. The baby, in Elena's arms, began to cry. Keep quiet, Jacob hissed. But the sound grew louder. The door burst open, and Father Elias stepped inside, or what was left of him. His priest robes were torn, his mouth smeared with blood, and his cross hung upside down around his neck. My children, he said calmly, the Lord of blood welcomes you. Tomas lifted his hammer. Stay back, Elias smiled, showing sharp fangs. The Alpha offers mercy. Serve him, or feed him. The windows shattered. Red vines burst through the cracks, wrapping around chairs and walls. One vine caught Tomas's leg and pulled him to the ground. He screamed as it dragged him toward the door. Jacob tried to cut the vines, but wherever he struck, they grew back stronger. The air filled with the smell of iron and rot. Outside, on top of the hill, Lord Valen watched with glowing eyes. His body still carried cracks from the night Nora struck him, but now those cracks glowed with red light instead of pain. He raised his hand, and the vines obeyed like soldiers. Soon, he whispered, this world will bloom in blood. A shadow approached behind him, a ghostly form, wearing Nora's torn cloak. Her face was pale, her eyes glowing faint white. Why do you return, mortal spirit? Valen asked. Nora's voice was soft, but fierce. To stop you again. Valen's smile was cruel. You ended my heart once, but you forgot every drop of my blood carries life. He waved his hand. The ground opened, showing thousands of tiny red seeds beating like hearts. Can you kill them all? Nora's ghost stepped closer, light glowing from her hands. I don't need to, Valen frowned. What do you mean? The living will. At that moment, down in the village, Jacob struck a lantern against the wall, setting the vines ablaze. The fire spread fast, burning through the schoolhouse and out into the streets. People began to fight back with fire, salt, silver, anything they could find. Valen hissed in rage. Fools, fire cannot destroy me. Nora's ghost raised her hands toward the burning horizon. No, but faith can. A bright light burst from the flames, forming a shape of a cross in the sky. The undead screamed as their bodies turned to ash. The red vines shriveled and blackened. Valen roared, his power fading. This is not the end, Nora's ghost whispered. It never is, but neither is hope. The light grew brighter until the entire hill burned red and white. When morning came, the fires were gone. The fields were nothing but gray ash. Raven Hollow was silent again. Jacob stood beside Martha, both covered in soot. Do you think it's over? He asked. Martha looked at the sunrise. The curse sleeps, but it never truly dies. Far beneath the ashes, a single red ember pulsed once. Thump, thump, and a faint whisper drifted through the wind. The blood remembers. The dawn came quietly over Raven Hollow. Smoke still rose from the burned houses. curling into the red morning sky. The survivors moved through the ruins in silence, too tired to cry, too shocked to speak. Martha leaned on her walking stick, staring at the ashes of the pumpkin field. "It's over," she whispered. But even she didn't believe it. Jacob stood beside her. His hands were burned, his face covered in soot. "The vines are gone," he said. "The people are safe. Maybe that's enough." But then, they both heard it, a sound so faint it almost felt like imagination. Thump, 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 a heartbeat. It came from deep under the earth. Martha's face turned pale. "No, it can't be." That night, the survivors gathered in what was left of the old church. The fire had destroyed most of it, but the stone basement was still standing. Jacob carried a lantern. Its light flickered on the walls, showing old carvings, symbols of protection and warning. "What are these marks?" he asked. Martha traced one with her finger. "They're older than the village itself. They speak of the tomb below the hollow, the place where the first vampire was buried." Elena, clutching her child, looked terrified. "You mean there's another one?" Martha nodded slowly. "No, not another. The same one." They followed the carvings through a narrow tunnel behind the church altar. The air grew colder, heavy with the smell of old soil and iron. Water dripped from the ceiling, like blood from a wound. After a long walk, they reached a massive iron door, covered in chains and rust. On it were words carved in Latin, "Hic dormit lumen sanguinis." Martha translated softly. "Here sleeps the light of blood." Jacob frowned. "Light? I thought he was darkness." Martha's eyes glimmered. "That's what they want you to believe. But every curse hides a secret truth." She pressed her hand against the door. It opened with a low groan. Inside was a huge underground chamber. The walls were lined with skeletons, hundreds of them, kneeling as if they had died praying. In the center stood a stone coffin, surrounded by melted candles. The air was colder than death. Jacob lifted the lantern closer. "Is that him?" The coffin's lid was cracked. Through the gap, they saw ashes and something glowing faintly red. "The heart of ash," Martha whispered. "It reformed." Elena stepped forward. "We have to destroy it before it grows again." But as she spoke, the air shifted. The ashes in the coffin began to move. The red glow brightened, pulsing faster. A deep voice rolled through the chamber. "You burned my body, but not my name." The lantern flickered. Jacob dropped it, and the flame went out. Darkness swallowed them. From the coffin, Lord Valen rose once more, his form half ash, half flesh. His eyes burned like coals in a dying fire. Martha gasped. "It's impossible. You were destroyed." Valen smiled. "Did you really think death can kill what death itself created?" He raised his hand. The skeletons on the walls began to move, their jaws creaking open, empty eyes glowing red. Jacob grabbed a metal rod from the ground. "We end this now," he charged, striking Valen's chest. The rod burned through the vampire's body, sending sparks flying. But Valen didn't fall. Instead, he laughed a cold, hollow laugh that echoed off every wall. "You mortals never learn," he said. "For every light you build, I am the shadow it creates." Then, a soft light began to glow near the door. White, pure, almost gentle. It was Nora's ghost. Valen turned slowly. "You again." Nora's voice was calm. "You took my life. You won't take theirs." She stretched out her hand, and the chamber filled with white light. The skeletons froze. The red glow in Valen's eyes faded for a moment. He growled. "You think your spirit can stop me?" Nora stepped closer, her face glowing brighter. "Not my spirit. My choice." She touched his chest where the heart of ash glowed. "Light was born from blood once. It can be born again." The red glow turned white. Valen screamed as cracks of light spread across his body. The walls shook. The ground split open. Jacob shouted, "Run!" Martha grabbed the baby, pulling Elena toward the tunnel. They climbed as the chamber collapsed behind them. Valen's voice roared one last time. "I am eternal. The blood will—" His words ended in a blast of white fire. When the survivors reached the surface, the dawn was breaking again. The red hue was gone. The sky was clean, pale blue for the first time in weeks. Martha looked back at the church ruins. "It's done." Jacob nodded slowly. "She saved us again." Elena smiled through her tears. "May she rest in peace." A warm wind passed through the ashes, carrying a whisper soft and kind. "Rest only when the world is safe." The people of Raven Hollow rebuilt their homes, planted new crops, and buried the dead. But no one ever went near the field again. And far beneath the earth, where the tomb once stood, a single white light still glowed, the last light of Raven Hollow, keeping the darkness asleep. 30 years had passed since the last blood moon. The story of Raven Hollow had become a whisper, a tale told by old villagers to scare children. The field where the pumpkins once bled was now covered with tall grass and forgotten graves. But legends never truly die. The first snow of winter came early that year. It fell quietly, covering the ruined church, the cracked tombstones, and the black soil that once burned red. From a distance, the land looked peaceful, pure, silent, asleep. But under the snow, something was breathing. In a small wooden cabin near the edge of the old village lived Elena's daughter, now a grown woman named Clara. She had never believed her mother's stories of vampires and cursed pumpkins. She thought they were bedtime tales made to keep her inside after dark. But that winter night, Clara's son, Samuel, ran inside shouting, "Mama, the snow is bleeding." She frowned. "What are you talking about?" He pointed outside. In the white snow near their door, a trail of red drops stretched toward the woods, thick and slow, like something was walking and bleeding at the same time. Clara's hands trembled. She remembered her mother's final words before she died. "If the snow turns red, the curse has woken again." The wind howled through the forest. The trees creaked like bones. Clara followed the trail with a lantern. Samuel begged to go with her, but she made him stay inside. Each step she took made the snow crunch softly beneath her boots. The drops of blood grew thicker, leading her toward the old pumpkin field, now just a blanket of snow. The air was too quiet. Even the wind had stopped. Then she heard it. A faint sound. Thump, 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 like a heartbeat beneath the ground. She knelt, brushed away the snow, and saw something dark frozen in the soil, a round shape. She cleared more snow, and her breath caught in her throat. It was a pumpkin, black and cracked, still beating. Suddenly, the ground beneath her hand moved. She jumped back as a thin vine shot out of the soil, wrapping around her wrist. It burned her skin even through her gloves. She screamed and pulled away, slicing the vine with her lantern's broken glass. The pumpkin pulsed harder, its cracks glowing faint red. From inside it came a whisper, cold and slow. "The Alpha sleeps, but not forever." Clara stumbled backward, terrified. She turned to run, but the snow around her began to move, small red vines rising like veins through white powder. A shadow passed across the moon. She looked up. The sky had turned gray, and snowflakes now fell mixed with ash. Back in the cabin, Samuel waited by the window, clutching a candle. He could hear the wind outside, but also a whisper, soft and close. "Samuel." He froze. "Mama?" The voice came again, this time behind him. "Samuel, open the door." He turned and screamed. A figure stood outside, covered in snow. It looked like his mother, but her eyes glowed red, and black veins crawled up her neck. Her voice was wrong, deep, echoing. "Let me in, my child." He stepped back, trembling. "You're not my mother." Her smile widened. "Then come to me, and I will make you like me." The candle blew out. The door burst open, but before the shadow could enter, a blinding white light filled the room. A woman's voice whispered through the air, calm, powerful, familiar. "Back to the dark, creature of blood." The shadow hissed and vanished into the snowstorm. Samuel looked around, terrified. "Who's there?" The candle flickered back to life, and in its small flame he saw the faint outline of a woman glowing softly, dressed in old clothes, her face kind but sad. It was Nora's spirit. "Don't be afraid," she said gently. "The curse has returned, but you can stop it." Samuel swallowed hard. "How? I'm just a boy." "You carry her blood, the blood of the one who ended him once. Go to the church when the moon turns red again. The dagger still waits." Her voice faded with the wind. "Do not run from the dark. Face it." Outside, Clara's body stood motionless in the snow. Her eyes opened, glowing red. The Alpha's voice whispered inside her head. "My seed grows through you. My hunger returns." As the storm raged over Raven Hollow, the old church bell rang by itself, even though it had no rope, no hand to pull it. And from beneath the frozen earth, a deep growl echoed, ancient, angry, awake. The blood moon rises again. The snow began to melt, not from warmth, but from blood spreading underneath. The snow stopped falling, but the silence that followed was worse. Every tree stood still. Every sound in the forest died. The world around Raven Hollow felt like it was holding its breath. And then, the bell rang again. Gong, gong, gong. Each echo rolled across the valley like thunder. From beneath the frozen ground, red cracks spread like lightning veins. The frost began to bleed. Inside the old cabin, Samuel sat near the window, staring at the dark forest. Nora's voice still echoed in his mind. "Go to the church when the moon turns red again." He looked up at the sky. The moon, hidden behind clouds for days, was now visible and slowly turning crimson. Samuel took his coat, the candle, and his mother's old locket, whispering, "I'm coming, Mama. I'll save you." He stepped into the night. The snow under his boots was warm, pulsing like living flesh. As he reached the ruined church, the air grew thick and heavy. The wind carried whispers again, the same words that haunted generations. The blood remembers. The Alpha rises. Inside, the candles lit themselves one by one, though no hand touched them. At the center of the cracked altar lay a silver dagger, still glowing faintly, the same one Nora had used years ago. Samuel picked it up. The moment his hand touched it, the church trembled. A deep voice filled the air, ancient, cold, and furious. "The blood of my destroyer returns." The floor beneath the altar shattered. A red light burst upward, filling the room. From the fire and smoke, Lord Valen rose again. But he was different now. His form was not flesh nor ghost, it was pure blood and shadow, his body flowing like smoke, his eyes blazing brighter than the moon. "You should not exist," Samuel said, his voice trembling. Valen smiled. "Yet here I am, born again through your mother's flesh. Her soul was my seed, her blood my soil." Samuel's eyes filled with tears. "You turned her into a monster." Valen's laughter shook the walls. "No, I set her free from weakness. Soon, you will join her." The air turned red. The snow outside melted into rivers of blood. Through the broken windows, pumpkin-shaped growths began to rise again, glowing, breathing, whispering. Samuel gripped the dagger tightly. "Nora, if you can hear me, help me." At once, the air shimmered, and a soft white light appeared beside him. Nora's spirit formed again, her eyes calm, her hands glowing. "My time is almost gone," she said gently. "But your courage is my strength." Valen snarled. "You again? You defy the eternal?" Nora turned to Samuel. His power grows from the blood moon. Break the moonlight, and he will fall. But how? Through reflection, she whispered. Turn his own light against him. Samuel looked around and saw the old church bell, cracked but still hanging above. He climbed the wooden ladder as Valen's laughter echoed below. You think you can escape me, boy? I am older than time itself. As Samuel reached the top, he pulled the silver dagger from his belt and struck the bell's side. It shattered into pieces, and one large shard of silver bell metal fell to the floor, landing in a puddle of blood. The reflection in that puddle shone directly at the moon. The red light bent and came back down, straight onto Valen. He screamed, his body twisting, melting, and splitting into red mist. No! My own blood burns me! Nora raised her hand, her ghostly form glowing brighter. It ends tonight, Valen. You will feed the earth you cursed. Samuel jumped down, driving the dagger through the shadowy figure's chest. The church exploded in a wave of white and red light. When Samuel opened his eyes, the church was gone. Only ashes and snow remained, and the dagger, buried halfway in the frozen ground, still glowing. His mother, Clara, lay nearby, unconscious but breathing. Her eyes were normal again, no red, no shadow. Mama, he whispered, hugging her. She opened her eyes weakly. Samuel, is it over? He looked at the sky. The blood-red moon was fading back to silver. The whispering had stopped. Yes, he said softly. It's over. Nora's voice floated on the wind one last time. Remember, Samuel, courage is the only light that never dies. The wind calmed. The snow began to fall again, white this time, pure and silent. Years later, when spring came, flowers grew where the old church once stood. No pumpkins, no vines, no blood, just wild lilies and white roses. But deep beneath the ground, where light never reached, a drop of red still moved through the soil, slow, patient, alive. And far away, under a new moon, a whisper returned. The blood never forgets. 20 years passed after the blood moon faded. The story of Raven Hollow turned into a legend, something people laughed at in daylight, but whispered about after dark. Children played near the old ruins, daring each other to step into the forest that surrounded the village. They called it the Whispering Forest, because on cold nights, the wind there didn't sound like wind. It sounded like voices, soft, broken, calling names that no one remembered. Most ignored it, until the trees began to bleed. One cold evening, a hunter named Jonas Reed entered the forest. He followed deer tracks through the snow. But soon, he noticed the prints were gone, replaced by red streaks across the ground. He touched one. It was warm. Blood? He whispered. Then he heard something, a heartbeat, slow, heavy, coming from deep inside the woods. He raised his lantern, but the fog was thick. Between the trees, he saw something strange, a tree shaped like a human body, its bark twisted and cracked, and its roots pulsing with red veins. As he stepped closer, he realized the tree was weeping. Thick red sap oozed from its trunk, dripping into the snow. Jonas took a step back. What kind of tree bleeds? Then the tree spoke. The blood remembers. Jonas dropped his lantern. The flame hit the snow and died. He ran, branches tearing at his coat, but the whisper followed him. Raven Hollow sleeps, but not forever. He didn't stop running until he reached the village square. The next morning, Jonas told the others what he saw. Old Martha's granddaughter, Lydia, now the village healer, frowned. You must have dreamed it. But when she followed him into the woods, she found it too, the tree that bled. The red sap still fresh. It smells like iron, she whispered. Jonas nodded. Like blood. Lydia noticed something else. A small red seed stuck in the frozen soil below the tree. It pulsed faintly. She bent to pick it up, but Jonas grabbed her hand. Don't touch it. She hesitated. It's just a seed. He shook his head. That's how it started last time. That night, the villagers gathered at the inn. The fire crackled, and fear hung heavy in the air. Jonas spoke first. The forest isn't safe. We have to burn it before it spreads. Lydia disagreed. We don't even know what it is. Fire could make it worse. An old man sitting in the corner looked up. His face was pale and wrinkled. It's the curse, he said quietly. The alpha vampire's roots. He's coming back. The room went silent. Who are you? Jonas asked. The man stared into the fire. A traveler. I once saw the blood moon myself. It marked me. He rolled up his sleeve. His arm was covered in faint red lines that pulsed beneath the skin. They never go away, he whispered. At midnight, a scream echoed from outside. The villagers ran to the square and froze. Jonas's horse hung from a tree drained completely of blood. Beneath it, red vines slithered across the snow like snakes. Lydia covered her mouth. It's happening again. The old man nodded slowly. He's feeding through the earth now. His body may be gone, but his hunger lives on. A gust of wind blew through the square, carrying a whisper that everyone heard. The alpha rises when the forest bleeds. Over the next days, the forest spread faster. The trees grew thicker, their roots pushing closer to the village walls. Every night, people heard the same whisper. Raven Hollow remembers. The blood never sleeps. Lydia began keeping a journal. She wrote down every strange event. The bleeding trees, the vanishing animals, the flickering lights near the ruins. On the 7th night, she wrote her last entry. The forest moves. It's coming for us. I hear the heartbeat under my floor. The next morning, her house was empty. The door still open, her lamp still burning. But in the corner of the room, a small red pumpkin sat on the table, freshly grown. It had Lydia's locket tied around its stem. By winter's end, half the village was gone. The survivors moved away, leaving the place to the trees and fog. Raven Hollow vanished from maps, forgotten by time. But travelers who passed through the valley said they sometimes saw strange lights between the trees, glowing red orbs that looked like eyes. And when the wind was just right, they swore they could hear a woman's voice whispering from the dark. The forest breathes, and the alpha waits. Snow melted early that year. The forest around Raven Hollow no longer whispered, it breathed. Trees moved slightly when no wind blew. Their roots pulsed like veins. Far beneath those roots, something ancient opened its eyes. Thump, thump, thump. The heartbeat that had haunted generations now shook the soil once more. From ash and blood, Lord Valen began to rise again, not as a man, but as something far worse. His bones formed from branches, his veins from roots, his heart from the forest itself. The first night, a red moon returned without warning. The villagers who had fled decades ago woke to see its glow on the horizon. Some prayed, others packed to run again. But it was too late. The trees surrounding the valley cracked open, releasing red mist. From within the fog came shapes half tree, half human, the forest's new servants. They walked silently, their eyes burning like coals, their mouths whispering one word, Valen, the last survivors. Only 3 people remained near the old ruins. Jonas, scarred from his last hunt. Mira, Lydia's niece. And Samuel, now grown into a man with a silver dagger hanging from his belt. Samuel looked at the blood-red sky. He's coming, isn't he? Jonas nodded. He never stopped. Mira pointed toward the forest. Then we go where he sleeps. We finish what our mothers started. They armed themselves with lanterns, silver blades, and salt. The snow under their feet hissed with each step. At the forest center stood a colossal tree, its bark black, its roots spread like claws. From its trunk, a deep red light glowed, and every branch dripped with thick crimson sap. Samuel whispered, "That's not a tree." Jonas gripped his axe. It's him. The ground split open, roots twisted together, forming the shape of a tall figure. When it raised its head, the red moon brightened. Lord Valen stood before them again, a creature made of blood, wood, and hatred. I fed the earth, he said. Now the earth feeds me. Jonas swung his axe first. The blade hit Valen's arm and burst into flames. Valen laughed, his voice echoing through the forest. Steel cannot kill what grows from death. Mira threw salt into the air. The wind carried it like snow. For a moment, the creature stumbled, its skin sizzling. Samuel raised the silver dagger, the same one Nora once held. This ends now, he charged, stabbing the dagger into Valen's chest. The monster roared, grabbing Samuel and lifting him off the ground. You think light will save you again? Valen hissed. But above them, the red moon flickered and Nora's spirit appeared once more, glowing white against the crimson sky, the final light. Her voice was soft but filled with power. Every shadow ends where courage begins. The silver dagger in Samuel's hand began to glow. White light poured from it, spreading through the roots, into the soil, up the tree. Valen screamed as his body cracked apart, blood turning to ash. The forest caught fire, not red, but pure white flame. Each tree burned without smoke, cleansing the curse. Samuel fell to his knees as Nora's ghost faded into the light. Rest now, she whispered. The blood is free. When morning came, nothing remained of the whispering forest, only open land and the scent of rain. The soil, once black and poisoned, was green again. Jonas limped beside Samuel. Is it over this time? Samuel looked toward the sunrise. If we remember the darkness, it can't return. He buried the silver dagger deep in the ground where the last tree had stood. Then he whispered a prayer for every soul the curse had taken. Epilogue. Years later, children played in those fields again. No one feared pumpkins or the forest. But on quiet nights, when the wind blew through the tall grass, some swore they could hear a faint heartbeat beneath the earth, soft, slow, patient. And if you listened carefully, a whisper followed. Light sleeps, but the blood remembers.